It's the Cipher. It's the Cipher. It's the Cipher.
Politics, sports, and entertainment. You care about it, we talk about it.
You're entering the Cipher.
Now here are your hosts, Marcus and
there's
Muff.
a double standard about the N-word, sir, and I think that's part of what you're getting to about it, and we're going to get into that a little bit later. I'm imagining when we start talking about not so much. I mean, hip hop is what everybody's blaming it on now. Okay, that's the new scapegoat for everybody saying that. Okay, well, hip hop's using it now, and so that's why white people want to use it now. Okay, but the N-word has been in the mainstream for decades. Okay, I mean, I'm gonna take it back to Richard Pryor, even though it was even before him. It was in the mainstream. Okay, but it is just a matter of intent of the word, sir, and I think that's the one thing that needs to be very clear, because we've had this discussion numerous times. As a matter of fact, I'm going to bring up a story that me and Muff were at this I think we were at a party or something like that. I can't remember exactly where we were, and then somebody had asked and said, well, black people can use the N-word, and why can't white people use the N-word? And I remember your response to that, and I remember because you kind of blew me away with your response.
Was I drinking?
Probably.
Oh no.
no. But actually,
should you tell me first?
No, we're joking. No, and Muff just looked at him with a really serious face and said, "Why would you want to?"
Did I say that?
You said that.
Muff.
I was kind of like, okay, all right. You kind of got me there. So why would you want to use that word? And what type
Sometimes, man, listen, alcohol will open up your third eye. that's about it. You see
so and after that, that kind of like, and I think that was around the same time that, the NAACP was trying to bury the N-word and everything, and so I mean, it was a pretty hot topic at the time, and so yeah, and it's all about the intent of the word, and I've had people ask me before, why is it so offensive? Why can't white people use it?
Okay, let me, and caller, I'm glad you're listening, because I'm going to bring up a couple things to make my point on that note. Mm-hmm. Number one, they were interviewing just before on that DVD, George Carlin was being interviewed. It had to be like months before he died, George Carlin, who I appreciate. I think George Carlin is probably the funniest white comedian to me.
He's brilliant.
Always. He's always been, I mean, I'm not...
Comedian, period.
I don't particularly like his atheistic views necessarily, but he's funny. All right, okay. That's neither here nor there. But that said... They were asking him about the N-word, okay? And he said when he was in the service, he used to hang out with a lot of black dudes who would always use the N-word as a term of affection amongst each other. So this had to be during, I don't know how old he was when he died, but probably the Korean War, I probably get, or it might have been even Vietnam. I don't know how old he was. Who knows? But they would use that word affectionately. And then he also spoke about the fact that some white people would say, well, look, even though that black people had this oppression, other nationalities have had similar oppressions too. And then George Carlin will say, "Well, wait a minute. You're saying that. Where are my notes? You say you didn't, you didn't get raped when you came over here. Didn't come over here on a ship where half the people died. Your mom wasn't raped, and you weren't slaves. That changes the game altogether. And that's why slavery is probably the most profound issue of racism in general in the United States. Now, fast forward." I mentioned George Carlin to Richard Pryor, and I think in the DVD what they were trying to say about Richard Pryor, that he almost gave a swagger, if you will, to the N-word, okay? Now, and so it was like he used the N-word so much, it almost became cool because he was so, if you could use the word eloquent with the N-word and making it cool, he did that, because he was so funny in a way. And what made it unique about Richard Pryor is that it wasn't like it was a Def Comedy Jam. He played white audiences primarily.
Right.
You know what I mean? And made white audience not necessarily laugh at the N-word or laugh at black people, but make them think about their own prejudices.
Right.
And that's what he did. Now, even fast forward to the late 90s, and now, I'm always go back to hip-hop, Public Enemy. Chuck D's talking about the fact that between 88 89, when It Takes a Nation of Millions to Code Us Back, we weren't really calling each other the N-word, black people, black kids. We were like, no, we need to be more, well, hang on, wait a second. We were trying to be, you silly, be a little bit more conscious with each other, right? Now, check this out. Now, understand, by 88 89, It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back comes out.
Mm-hmm.
Then about a year or two later, here comes Gin and Juice.
Yeah,
and he said, and what wound up happening, I'm serious. He said NWA, you know, almost brought that back in vogue, almost in a negative way. Now, Dr. Dre, your Ice Cubes, The Chronic came out, you know, and even Straight Outta Compton. You know what I mean? When that stuff was coming, they would use that word so much, and then when they came out with it, there were so many other rap artists who, when they made songs about the N-word, it was like, if you were a real black man, you was a real N. You know what I mean? And we all kept it real with that. And I think that's what you see today manifest itself in hip-hop, is that type of stuff.
Pretty much. And I think, and I don't want to single out one race, but I mean, I'm just going to say white people in general. A lot of people, a lot of white people have a problem with us black people using it and not being able to use it. But you know what? And I'm going to kind of take that back a little bit because of the documentary. They went around and they started asking white people, can white people use the N-word? Now, you know, and then you had different views. I mean, for the majority of the people said, no, I don't think white people should be using that word because it's an ugly word. It's a word that people used in hatred. You know, if black people want to use it with themselves, I think it's their right. So I think a lot of people understand that. But you do have the small, I don't know how big the majority is, but you do have people, and you did have people in the documentary say, hey, look, black people use it, rappers use it, they should be accountable for it.
I mean, to me, I still have a hard time understanding that logic. It's not even logical to me. And even with that, let's go back to the 60s.
Okay.
And I guess there was some type of... If you were white, and how you used the word determined the type of what class you were in. I guess if you used the ER version of the N-word,
yeah, you were
lower class.
But
because if you were a racist that was in power, like Strom Thurmond or people who made laws, that word was beneath them. They would say, and I can say this because it's not the word, Negro.
Negro, yeah.
Yeah, you know, Negro.
He was a Negro.
You know, that meant that you had some sense about you, apparently. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, Batch, you got to weigh in on that one.
Negro.
I'm serious. Listen, that was high. That word was beneath them. Or,
I'm sorry, but that's just
this guy. Was he with Lovejoy or something? He's a nigga.
It's the Cipher.